All right, good afternoon. I'm Millie Blackwell. I'm the founder of Showcase Workshop, one of the sponsors of this wonderful event. And last night at 8 p.m. Central Time, I got a notification that we were having a speaker change. So luckily for me, I live in the future. I'm calling you from New Zealand. So it's 8:30 on Friday morning. And I was able to use my time zone to my advantage and do some research on our freshest and most vibrant presenter, Jared Loftus. So Jared's entrepreneurial story started with beaded necklaces in the 5th grade and reached its first crescendo when Forbes named him college football's biggest entrepreneur. I hope we'll hear more about that. Since then, there have been many high points, but Jared joins us today in his capacity as COO at Rasa.io. Rasa is an AI-powered newsletter platform that helps you improve your relationships with subscribers by delivering content that is personal to them. Sounds amazing. So without further delay, I'll hand over to Jared, who will be teaching us how we can start to use artificial intelligence to reshape our customer relationships.
All right, let's do this. Thank you, Millie. Mary Ellen reached out and said, hey, I need you to take your 2-hour presentation and put it into 20 minutes. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm kidding. It's not that bad. So we're going to dive right into it to talk about this. Basically, what we're going to do here is kind of take the history of Netflix, walk you through some things that this is what happens when you get asked last minute to do fun things like this. And slides. So forgive me on some slides. They normally look better, but we're going to go through the history of Netflix and show you how they became the content juggernaut that they are today. And then what are the lessons that we can apply to ourselves and things to think about along the realm of AI. AI gets a bad rap a lot of times. And this is more going to talk about what it can do. We're not going to be really doom and gloom and pessimistic about it. It's going to be more from an angle of it's here. How do we use it? What do we need to know? All right. So let's start with the history of Netflix. Okay. So you've got Reed Hastings that started this way back in 1997. Yes, over 20 years ago. Some people forget that it's been that long. And when we're going to fast forward 10 years from there. So from 97 to 2007, they're figuring this out. For those of you that may have been members then, you actually got a DVD in the mail. Imagine something coming in the mail that wasn't from Amazon. And in 2007, they made this bold proclamation that they were going to take their service to streaming. At the time, they're doing streaming and DVD, but eventually it said, okay, we're going to go to streaming only. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. How are you going to do this? Because the streaming that you have available are things like Raising Arizona and Mallrats and just like kind of B and C list movies. Apologize to all the Mallrats fans out there, but things that like not a lot of people are looking for, you know? At the beginning, they only had about 1,000 videos. They paid around $40 million for this licensing and the data centers involved in the 1,000 videos just to get them started. Right? This is what that looked like, if you remember. This was before we had like widely available fast internet, you know, so you had to wait for things to load. It wasn't on demand, right? And so then let's go to 2009. They get a little bit more. At this point, they've got about 20 million subscribers. They did some deals with NBC, Universal, Sony, Disney. At this point, they paid about $25 million to Stars to get. Remember, this is as the Great Recession is happening. They're like, yeah, we'll take some money for content we've already made. This gave Netflix a little bit of a new lifeline, new content that they could put out to the world. So they're getting more people into the service. Devices are coming along, internet's coming along, bandwidth is coming along. And then in 2012, they kind of step out and put their first original programming. A lot of people think it was House of Cards. Actually, before House of Cards came Lilyhammer. So it was this like New York gangster goes into witness protection. They send him to Norway. In case you're wondering, yeah, that's Steven Van Zandt from the E Street Band. that is what led them then to House of Cards. So if you remember when this came out, it was a huge deal. They put like $100 million into 2 13-episode series, no pilot. It was a big risk. It was the first time that that anyone had really gone this length to put out their own content. And from there, this greatly increased Netflix's visibility. They got a bunch of Emmy nods. Second season was a lot of hoopla. They released it on a weekend around on Valentine's Day. It's where binge watching really became a thing. And then fast forward to 2018, and this is the year that they got more Emmy nominations than HBO. So previously HBO was the leader, and they got more nominations than HBO and then tied them for actual number of statues won. So that was just in this 5-6 year period, right? So let's talk about how they did that. So how did Netflix get here? Well, we're going to rewind a little bit. This is what rewinding used to look like for those of you that may remember it. So a couple of things. Oh, this is painful. So sorry. So Lilyhammer Insights, one of the things, the length of the show is not determined by the story arc, right? So if they need to do 8 episodes or they need to do 18 episodes, the networks aren't determining that. The show itself, like how the story needs to go, is what will dictate how many episodes there are. They also learned that making it all available at once, this was revolutionary, right? Like we're right about the time when DVRs are coming out and people are getting away from appointment TV to like scheduling their life around their show coming on Thursday night at 7:00 to I can watch it whenever I want and I can watch it all at once. That was a big deal. They also learned that you can create programming that caters to specific interests, not just what meets the mass crowd or what polls well, but like you could take a specific thing. And not only that, the high production costs, when they put a lot into it, it gets a lot of hoopla, they get a lot of earned media, and that helps grow it as well. So now that's what they learned about the content, but from the streaming, they got a lot of information, okay? So they got all of this customer behavior that wasn't available on DVD, right? So they could know the actors you like, the directors, the genres, when are you watching it? How long are you watching it? Do you watch it all at once? They didn't, they knew they sent you a DVD and they knew that you sent it back. All the in-between they weren't getting with that. But in streaming, they were able to do this. And then even in the early days when they didn't have a lot of programming, they at least got to see what you were looking for. What are you searching for that we don't have? And how do we get that so that we can give it to our customers? So I think this really sums it up on coming up with the content that they do. It doesn't really matter if you're a 60-year-old woman or a 20-year-old man, because a 20-year-old man can watch Say Yes to the Dress and a 60-year-old woman could watch Hellboy. That doesn't meet what people would expect, right? Those don't meet the demographics that they plan for. But it doesn't matter when you can do this one-to-one programming. So the bet of $100 million gamble, was it that big of a bet? I would argue that you take this equation of, okay, Social Network was available. It was one of their highest watched things. The British version of House of Cards, also very popular at the time. And then you take the people that like that also watched other Kevin Spacey or David Fincher films, and you've got a big enough group that for all intents and purposes should like this programming, right? And they did. Not only did they like it, but they told others. They were binging, and it is the thing that we all know today. So now you can't even turn on Netflix and watch something that isn't produced by Netflix, So how can we do the same? Well, they obviously leveraged artificial intelligence in a number of ways. For any of you that aren't working with billion-dollar budgets, but how do I do, want to know how you can do this yourself? Let's go into the AI. So a couple of things, we're going to skim the surface so that we're all on the same page here about artificial intelligence. So some people say artificial intelligence or machine learning or deep learning, like this is all in the same realm, right? Like these are all parts of AI. So artificial intelligence is any technique which enables computers to mimic human behavior, okay? So we're going to go into the ways that that can occur. So machine learning is basically statistics on overdrive. It's the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So instead of hard coding software routines with specific instructions to accomplish a particular task, machine learning is a way of training an algorithm, this code, so that it can learn how to do those. So training it involves feeding huge amounts of data, which is more and more available now that the internet has sped up. It helps us to get it faster. It also helps us to produce it faster. So there's plenty of data out there that you can choose from. And then we've got deep learning. So this is where you take machine learning and experience. I love this picture. If you have small kids, you understand some people just need to learn on their own, right? They need to experience it to understand. So with the emergence of the internet and the huge increase in the amount of digital information being generated, it's become much more feasible to do this machine learning because we can teach the computers and machines how to do it all, right? And it'd be far more efficient to code them to think like human beings than plug them into all of this information so that can give it the experience to take it forward. So that's me summing up AI very quickly. I'll take some questions later if we need to dive in deeper, but just understand those concepts. Lots of data, being able to push this all out there and then have code and software to learn from that data and then react to it. That's where AI really comes in handy. And so when you have the ability to get that, that's where you can start to think, okay, well, if I've got all this data, how can we apply it? How can we apply AI? That's where we're going to go next and talking about, so how can we get started? All right. Millie, I'm looking at this, we're going to take Q&A. I'll just pop over to Q&A, or Millie, if you want to give those questions to me as you get them, let me know. So how do we get started? Here are some things to think about from the customer behavior standpoint, right? So when Netflix made the switch from DVD, physical item, physical good, to the streaming service, they brought it all online. The things that they were able to access that they never could imagine beforehand, well, what are those things for you? So you've got your websites, newsletters / emails that you've got going out. You may have events or courses, seminars, webinars. What are these things that you have? So on the website example, we're all familiar with Google Analytics. That's a kind of a no-brainer. This is you going in and you know which pages get the most views, which get the most time on page, the traction, that kind of thing. So that's very much quantitative, right? But what I'd like to show you is how you can take this information and start to apply it to readily available AI that's out there. So you don't have to go develop this stuff yourself. So things like natural language processing, which is, Siri, Alexa, the ability to hear a voice, understand it, and then speak back an answer or response. That's all around natural language processing. But IBM's Watson has like a free, readily to use demo that you can go to online. In fact, actually, we're gonna deviate 1 second from this script. I'm going to show this to you where you can go to this website right here. If you just Google IBM Watson demo, you're going to come to this. You can see the link up here. But basically, you can take a link of any page. So let's say you're looking at your Google Analytics. Here are the things that get the most traffic. You could take that URL, put it into this analyzer and analyze it. Obviously, we're doing it on a manual basis. There's plenty of things that allow you to really dig in and do it on a mass scale. But now I don't even have to look at this page, and I get a really decent understanding. Like every now and then it'll get weird, but you can pick up entities, keywords, concepts. So it's about a podcast. Here are the things that it discusses. Entities, these are names that are discussed. Now imagine you do that on all of your content without you actually having to read it. It gives you some classification. This is where things get a little weird. Sometimes sentiment and emotion, those I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight in them, but you can see it, right? Like you can see how this plays out. And so if you apply this to the data that you do have, then where can you go from there? Okay. I'm going to give you a couple other ideas. Just remember this, like keep this in your mind around being able to, like that, apply natural language processing to really any content you have. You can even input text. Let's say you've got a Google Doc or something that you're working with that it's not on a website. You can put it in here to have it analyzed, right? Just to start to understand how this stuff works. So that's on the website. The next piece that I would encourage you to think about is, and I'm a bit biased, this is where RASA comes into play, is around newsletters and emails. So you probably email your audience. Well, what is it that they're clicking on in these emails? So one of the ways that we've applied AI and natural language processing to email is around this idea of being able to share content with people, but on an individual basis. So imagine I've got a lot of different articles, whether from me or from external sources, that I want to share with people, but I only want to share them to the right people that would be interested. So what this is showing, it's terribly blurry. I'm very sorry about this. I'm assuming that we'll have a way to, using the interwebs, get these presentations to you in a better format. But this is showing articles that come into the platform. Natural language processing is applied. You've got all of these articles that these tags and concepts assigned to the articles. And then based on the user's behavior in the email, that determines which articles go to which people. So the 7 articles out of these 49 here, the 7 articles that come to me in my email may be different than the 7 articles that go to Millie in her email. All based on the AI determining which one was most likely to be interesting to that person receiving it. So where else can you get data? You've got events. We're all holding these virtual events. We've got this event itself, talking to Mary Ellen about all of the data that comes out around this. So you've got this video recording, which is going to be transcribed. Okay. So that transcription will be available. I can take that transcription and put it into that IBM Watson that I was just showing you. I then know who attended this session. So that allows me to start to make some pairings of topics of interest to these people, all of the other sessions that you may have been available. And who knows, the next event that I have, I'm able to say, you know what? We think that these people would like this, and we're going to actually recommend this to them to be able to push them towards what would be most relevant to them. Okay. So the event that you're holding, now that it's all online, is able to generate a significant amount of data for you along the lines of your audience and what they may be interested in. And then you've got, people that are doing courses, whether it's certifications or licensing or licensure or just a workshop that you've got online. Like all of that is content that can now be analyzed using artificial intelligence. There are plenty of tools out there to see off the shelf. Obviously, if you've got developers on hand, that becomes a little bit easier to put the pieces together. But what I would say is, of course, in the world of content and everything that's going on, you've got to start thinking about, okay, well, where do you want to be on this? Do you want to be on the side of Netflix? Or would you rather be, closer to the side of Blockbuster when it comes to how you determine or how you choose to see AI in its place in this world of content, right? Because we talk to a lot of people that have kind of doom and gloom and like, oh, it's going to take us over, or it's going to curate me out of a business. No, I mean, from everything that I've seen, it still has to start with the human being. It still has to start with, in our case, we say, human curation before AI curation, right? And so the thing that I've heard that I like to remind people of is it's not necessarily that you're going to lose your job to AI. It's more that you would probably lose your job to someone that knows about AI, which isn't too dissimilar from the current world of, people that know SEO or are just digital marketing tactics more so than, old school ways of doing content and marketing. That's an important skill now. AI is not really any different. So just threw a whole lot at you in a very small time frame. Millie, let's go from here. Let's dive in.
Well, for myself, I wanted to say that it's always really impressive when somebody can take a very complex thing and make it very simple. It's always easier to make it more complex, but I was really impressed by the way that you managed to make AI break it down to its simplest parts. And I want to thank you for giving me Netflix as the perfect example when I have to start explaining AI to people who don't have any familiarity with what it is, but probably know what Netflix is.
That most people know about Netflix, so it's an easy backstop.
Yeah, right. And I did have a flashback to my college roommate who got a Netflix subscription on a DVD and thought that he was very cutting edge. So we haven't, unless I'm not looking at this properly, we either have a shy audience or we haven't got a question from the audience yet. So I'll start by asking if you could go a little further on your point at the end there about not necessarily losing jobs to AI, but to people who know about AI. Can you go a little bit further on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think where it is now is it's, there's so much being thrown at us from many different angles, and you don't really know what to think. And just like anything else, you're much better off, like, at least dipping your toe in and like crawling before you walk, before you run. And there's so many ways to do that with AI, right? Like, there's really no reason that you should be completely ignorant or naive to AI when, like, you can literally just go to that website that I was mentioning earlier. It looks like it's in the chat of that IBM Watson demo, and you'll learn just a lot from there. Like, take your own website, take a blog article that you recently wrote, go put it into Watson and see how it analyzes it. Okay. It may do it in a wild and crazy way that you didn't see coming. Okay. That's a data point, right? Or it may be like, wow, that thing really summarized the article in a great way. Let me dig into that a little bit more. And as you understand those things, you get to, as you know more, you can ask better questions, right? And as you ask those better questions, that's when you can start to say, well, I wonder if it is possible for us to get movies out in distribution where it's going to be over the internet instead of me having to send this like physical thing. That could never be possible if they didn't even start to ask those questions, right? And how can you ask questions about something that you know nothing about? And so you don't need to go become an AI scientist, data scientist, or go back to school and get this like crazy degree around coding recommendations using artificial intelligence. But you do need to know it. Just like most people are in this audience are probably understanding SEO better, right? Or various other things around current marketing tactics. This is just a new tool. It gets a bad rap because of all of the, I think sometimes it's just easier to talk about the more dangerous or extreme sides of AI when in all likelihood, every single person is experiencing AI on a regular basis. Like if you've ever used your Google Maps to determine how to get somewhere, you used AI. If you've used Siri or Alexa or an Amazon customer, like you've had AI in your life. And so being able to spot that and understand it is only going to open you up to be able to understand it even more, because your questions get better. And as your questions get better, your answers that you discover are going to be much better. And it goes from there.
Yeah, I think that many of us have accepted that as marketers, our days of just being writers or just being designers are gone. And really, what we call digital marketers at the start of the 2000s is what we all have to be now. And AI is really the next step. And we've gone through SEO, and now we're into understanding AI. And as you say, using it to facilitate our work and make our work easier and better, and not running and trying to hide from it.
Well, and the things that people get concerned about of like, oh, well, what if it, boxes people in and only gives them the things that they've shown to be interested in. So now they're in an echo chamber, and the dangerous sides of it, right? Well, we have the benefit of a lot of other people making a lot of other mistakes before us. We've seen what's happened to Facebook and the folks that didn't, use it properly, or unintended consequences around that rabbit hole, right? Like the idea of, hey, you like this, let me show you some more of it. That's not evil, right? It's only at the extremes that it's become so. Well, if you can better understand that, then now you can help that to not happen. I can say, look, like in the newsletters we do, I'm not going to only show you what you've demonstrated to be interested in, because then I'll never learn anything else about you. I won't learn the things that you may also be interested in, but you haven't told me about, right? And so as you get to experience it more, you can help undo the negative aspects, right? You can be on guard to look for that and make sure that it doesn't happen.
So I will have to drop off now, but I would love for you to answer this question so I can watch it in the recording.
All right.
Can you just take this chance to tell us a little bit about Rasa and how we would go about building up that insight into our clients and starting to use the tool to communicate with them more personally, more directly. So I'll catch that on the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do it, Millie. Thank you very much. So Rasa, we make it possible to stay in touch with your customers on a regular basis in a relevant way, but without being salesy. And the idea there is that you as the sender have a certain domain authority, if you will, and you're probably not the only one talking about that domain, that area of expertise. And so if you had the ability to share content that's not just written by yourself, but by others, the other content still being relevant, if you could do that and share that content in a way that each individual customer of yours got what was most interesting to them, and it was about the recipient, not about the sender, but the recipient, where you're now being helpful, you're being relevant, you're being interesting, that the idea would be you can start to build a relationship with the person on the other end, because you're serving them. You're serving them relevant content. And so and then from there, that's a basis from where you can sell them more, or make them aware of whatever campaign it is that you're trying to put out there. But it starts with that relationship and it being built around some relevancy. And so the easiest way to get started, you go to the website, you create an account for free. You can see how you pull in content, and how, it's my earlier comment around it starts with human curation before you get to the AI curation. So you determine the content that goes into the pool of content, if you will. And let's say we start with 50 articles from various different sources, things that I've read over the last week, automate some of it coming in, maybe pull in some social feeds. And from those 50 articles, I'm okay with those 50. I don't want to send 50 to anybody, but I'm okay with any of those 50. The AI then decides, okay, well, which of the 7 or 10 or 5, whatever number you decide, which of these articles will go to each individual person based on what they've shown to be interested in. Now, you're going to start from 0 and it builds up from there. So at the beginning, it'll be a little bit of a randomized sample. But from there, it learns over time and starts to get more personalized to each individual.